Suddenly, this peaceful night will turn into a soul-shaking tale of mystery. Welcome to our channel, where tonight, we will unveil the most terrifying horror story that ever occurred in this place. Don't miss this eerie moment, as you might not be able to sleep peacefully after hearing the story we're about to share. The Unseen Friend. It was the fall of 1997 when my family moved into that quaint old house in the quiet town of Willowbrook. The transition was hard for me. A new school, new friends, and a new home that always seemed to echo with a sense of desolation. My parents tried their best to make me feel at ease, but there was a persistent loneliness that clung to me like a shadow. One evening, as the sun cast long, eerie shadows across the living room, I heard it, the soft, distant sound of children laughing. My curiosity piqued. I followed the giggles through the narrow hallway and down a set of creaky stairs. There, at the bottom, was a small door that led to a forgotten playroom. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. It was a dusty, dimly lit room filled with old toys and forgotten memories. And in the corner, playing with a set of wooden blocks, was a young boy who looked to be about my age. His clothes were old-fashioned, like something from another era, and his hair was neatly combed. Yet he seemed strangely out of place. I couldn't help but watch him for a moment, marveling at how he seemed completely absorbed in his play, as though I didn't exist. I cleared my throat and finally said, "Hi, I'm Alex. What's your name?" The boy didn't respond. He continued building his tower of blocks, his laughter filling the room. I waved my hand in front of his face, but he didn't flinch. It was as though he were trapped in a world of his own, oblivious to my presence. I shrugged off the odd encounter and returned upstairs to my room. I mentioned the mysterious boy to my parents, but they dismissed it as my imagination, a product of my loneliness in our new home. They assured me that there had never been any children living in the house before. Over the next few weeks, I often found myself drawn to the playroom. I would sit in the corner, watching the boy play with his toys. It was strange, but in some inexplicable way, his presence comforted me. I started talking to him, even though he never responded. I told him about my day, my struggles at school, and the ache of loneliness that gnawed at my heart. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard his voice for the first time. It was soft, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. "I'm lonely too," he said. Startled, I replied, "Me too." From that moment on, we communicated through whispers. It was as though I had found a friend, an unseen companion who understood the loneliness that had gripped me since we moved to Willowbrook. As weeks turned into months, I began to look forward to our nightly conversations. I told him about my dreams and my deepest fears, and he shared stories about a world that existed beyond the confines of our house. He told me about adventures, mysteries, and secrets hidden in the shadows. But I couldn't help but wonder about his own story. One evening, as we whispered in the dim light of the playroom, I asked, "Why are you here?" He hesitated for a moment before replying, "I used to live here a long time ago. I never had any friends, and I died alone in this house." His words sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't fathom the loneliness he must have endured in life. I felt a deep sadness for my unseen friend, and I promised that I would keep him company. As the months went by, I became more attached to the boy in the playroom. My parents grew concerned about my obsession with the room and what they saw as an imaginary friend. They even consulted a psychologist, who suggested that my loneliness might be causing me to create an imaginary companion. But I knew the truth. I wasn't alone in the playroom. The boy was real, even if no one else could see or hear him. And I was determined to keep my promise to my lonely friend. Years passed, and I continued to visit the playroom, even though I was no longer a child. My unseen friend had become a part of my life, a silent confidant who shared my joys and sorrows. Then, one day, I received a letter in the mail. It was an invitation to a high school reunion in Willowbrook. I hadn't been back to the town since we moved away, and the thought of returning filled me with a sense of nostalgia. As the day of the reunion approached, I couldn't help but wonder if I would encounter any of my old classmates, friends from a time long past. I even entertained the thought of introducing them to my unseen friend, the boy in the playroom. When I arrived in Willowbrook, the town seemed both familiar and foreign. The reunion was held at the old school building, and as I walked through the halls, memories flooded back. I recognized a few faces, but most of my classmates had moved on with their lives. I spent the evening catching up with old friends and sharing stories of our high school days. But I couldn't shake the feeling of sadness that lingered in the background. I missed the boy in the playroom, my unseen friend who had been my constant companion. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn to our old house, the place where it all began. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow on the familiar facade. I couldn't resist the urge to visit the playroom one last time, to say goodbye to the friend who had been with me for so long. I descended the creaky stairs, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I opened the door to the playroom, and there he was, the boy who had been my confidant, my companion in loneliness. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I have to go," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. He nodded, his gaze filled with understanding. It was time for me to move on, to let go of the past and embrace the future. As I left the playroom, I knew that my unseen friend would always be a part of me, a reminder of the loneliness we had shared and the bond we had formed. As I walked away from the old house, I felt a sense of closure, a weight lifted from my heart. I knew that my unseen friend had found the companionship he had longed for, even if it was in the afterlife. And I was grateful for the friendship we had shared, a friendship that had helped me through my loneliest days. Years later, I still think of my unseen friend and the playroom in that old house in Willowbrook. I often wonder if he continues to linger there, waiting for someone else to befriend, waiting to share his stories and his loneliness with another soul in need of a friend. And I hope that whoever enters that playroom next will find the same solace and comfort that I did, in the company of an unseen friend who understands the depths of loneliness and the power of friendship. Thank you for joining us on this mysterious journey tonight. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming chilling tales. See you in the dark night, where fear always awaits.